Everyone. So we are exploring different ways of securing APIs, and now key based authentication, client and server code we are going through. So
Python FastAPI.
it is key based authentication and client and server code.
API key authentication client and server. API key authentication with FastAPI. Hey everyone, back to this series on API authentication with Python.
So far we have covered basic authentication from how it works to implementing both client and server with FastAPI. In this part, we are moving to the next level.
API key authentication. You will learn what keys and how they work,
Pros and cons,
when to use them,
how to implement API key security in FastAPI with working code.
Let's dive right in. What is API key authentication?
API key authentication is a method where clients send a secret key with each request, usually in a header, query parameter, or cookie.
Unlike basic auth, there is no username or /password. Just a single token, the API key. Use it to identify or authorize access.
Keywords and concepts to learn.
Our focus should be on 7 points: stateless authentication,
API key rotation,
rate limiting,
header based authentication,
environment variables,
principles of least privilege,
service to service authentication. Pros and cons of API key auth. Pros:
simple to implement, works well for server to server communication, no need to manage user accounts, can be rotated or revoked easily.
cons:
API key can be exposed if not protected, especially in front end applications. No built in expiration, roles, or fine grained access control. Easily misused if shared or leaked. Still needs HTTPS to protect against interception. Security tip: never hard code API keys in front end or public repos. Always keep them in secure environment variables.
Implementation plan.
We will build a fast API server that protects a route using an API key,
Protects a route using an API key.
checks for the key in the request header,
Rejects the request if the key is missing or invalid. Let's try the server first.
here is the folder setup. So you create your folder name and under that create two files and one is for server, one is for a client, and requirements.txt which holds these are the 4 libraries are mandatory to be installed in your virtual environment.
API key auth server. Create a file called API key server.py. Let's log in to code editor and write the code.
Yeah, here is like a basic authentication. We have some import statements and I created an application object here for a fast API and I have created a API key name X API key and the key itself I have saved in the code, but this should come from an environment variable. We will discuss how to read from environment variable, a little code I wrote in the next slide. So API key header and I wrote this API key header like this. So and also I have a small function with async. Okay, here you see get API key and if at all this is success it will return that key. On failure it will raise HTTP exception with HTTP 403 forbidden error. Okay, if it is passes, how it will pass? It is having a dependency injection on security and taking that API key header. This particular header is being taken, and that is returning this particular key, and that key will be passed here, and you are checking in with API key, actual API key, which means whatever is server is sending us, you are capturing in this variable and checking with what you have locally and comparing. If it is both are equal, you are returning that key. And what is happening in your actual code, you are defining two routes. One is global route and the other one is custom route name I have given as secure data. Inside that I am again creating a dependency injection like get API key. What is this? This is this function. If this is passing, then only it will return this key here. And if it is coming here, which means you can write whatever you want in your own route. So I am returning that you have access to the secure data. I wrote this particular simple note, but you can write anything in your body. Here this is a public, and anybody without any authentication key, anybody can access this URL. This is the simple server.
Code breakdown.
API key header tells FastAPI to look for the key in custom header x-API-key. Get API key is a dependency function that checks the key and raises 403 if the key is invalid. We discussed, right? If the key is invalid, this will raise error, or it will check the key. If it is good, it will return the key. Okay, so the actual keys, super secret key 123 should ideally come from an environment variable like this. Import OS and read that environment variable and store into your variable instead of directly reading like this. So just for a simplicity purpose I kept here. Okay, this way it is not hard coded into the code base and safer and more flexible. Start the server. How do you start? You go to your virtual environment, whichever you have installed these all libraries, right? So then you simply type uvcon space API key server :app -- reload. How these two came? First thing is server file name. You have this API key server.py, right? This file name, and you have created an app object of FastAPI. This object name you need to take. So the app object is the second one, and -- reload. If you say any changes comes, like it is automatically reloads. So this is how you can start your this simple API key based authentication server. You can start. And
Testing the API. Accessing the public route.
so here using curl, you are using the simple localhost :8000 and response. You are accessing that slash, which is a root route. So you are getting this particular error, particular message, that is a general message.
Accessing the secure route with API key.
Here for a secure route, we have this particular slash secure -data defined, right, in our code. You see here slash secure -data. To access that, how you are doing your localhost :8000 slash secure -data. But inside curl, you are also header also you are passing along with your key. Response will come, obviously, whatever you wrote in your definition.
Wrong or missing API key.
So if you don't pass any of this API key, definitely your response code could not validate API key, and the status will come as 403 forbidden. Let's go next.
Client optional API -key client .py. Create a file called API key client.py. Let's open editor and write the code.
Okay, this is not mandatory, as we said, like it is a URL again, and you can put the header. This particular key you can read from Vault or AWS key manager or wherever, any key manager server. And your response using request library request.get, you can pass this URL, and all this header with the key based authentication you can pass here. So you will get the response, and you can print that stats code response.stats code and print that response.json. So the response we are sending there in JSON format, here you are capturing and printing. Yeah, that's all the client code.
Insights recap. Here are the things we learned and remembered. Remember, API keys are often used and in internal services, external SDKs, or third party
Integrations. They are best stored in environment variables or secret managers.
API key access is stateless, no session or login involved.
Can be combined with rate limiting, users tracking, or tiered access.
Example implementation.
We can implement API key authentication for internal microservice to microservice communication, storing the keys security in HashiCorp Vault and validating them with each request.
Summary. Today we learned how API key authentication works,
Discussed pros and cons and when to use it.
build a fast API server that checks for API key headers,
And we tested the API with valid and invalid keys.
Final note, in the upcoming videos we will cover more how other author styles works, when to use it, and what makes you to be expert. Let's learn authentication simple way.
Thank you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up.
Thank you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more Python plus related content, and let me know in the comments if you want any real-time examples with specific challenge to be solved. Please mention details in the comments. So subscribe, like, and stay tuned. Thank you.